My name is Koen Smeets, and with me today is Ilse Meijer. Welcome to the Conversation with the Deans interview series by Rethinking Economics NL, in which we interview deans of economics educations throughout the Netherlands. Our goal is to give you a better understanding of what makes each economics education throughout the Netherlands unique, and how this relates to the ideas of Rethinking Economics NL. Today with us is Professor Erik Stam. He is the Dean of the Utrecht University School of Economics, full Professor of Strategy, Organization and Entrepreneurship, and Faculty Director of the Utrecht University's Center for Entrepreneurship. He is also a visiting professor at the School for Advanced Studies, LUCA. Furthermore, he is a board member of the Strategic Research Team Institutions for Open Societies, a member of the Board of Advisors of Rabo Research, and co-founder of the Entrepreneurial Ecosystems Observatory. Previously, he was a visiting professor at the University of Oxford and Beijing University, and also a research fellow at the University of Cambridge. He describes himself as, quote, an undisciplined economist and a leading scholar on entrepreneurial ecosystems, interested in the societal and organizational context of entrepreneurship and how this improves the performance of firms and economies. We are delighted to have Professor Stam with us today to gain a better understanding of the intricacies in economics programs throughout the Netherlands. In this interview, we will firstly focus on Professor Stam's journey to becoming Dean of Utrecht University, what Utrecht University education values and what makes it unique, and lastly, how this relates to the ideas of rethinking economics and all. So Professor Stam, thank you for making the time to meet with us today. We're hoping you could start with a question about your experience. Could you tell us more about what inspired you to become an disciplined economist focused on entrepreneurial ecosystems and your journey becoming Dean at Utrecht University?
Yeah, thank you, Koen, for giving me the floor, and thank you for organizing this and continue to rethink economics, which I think is part and parcel of a dean's life, but of course of all economists in the academy. Yeah, how did I become an undisciplined economist and dean of the School of Economics? I have to admit that I never dreamt about that, so it's not a dream come true. And even from a family in which there are, entrepreneurship is more the rule than the exception, and there was no academic predecessor, so I'm sort of the black sheep of the family, so to say. Anyway, I was and am still fascinated by how societies change, how I think if you can summarize it into one term, this creative destruction. So how is it possible that people change things to improve the world, have a lot of face a lot of resistance. Many of them fail, some of them succeed, and that changes the world and explains, at least as how I say it to my students, that we are not in the Stone Age anymore. And I think there have been also some major improvements since the Stone Age, which this phenomenon of or process of creative destruction is an important mechanism. It doesn't explain everything, but it's an important notion, and I think also a mechanism to understand why society is changing and often to the better, and also understand why a lot of people have also a lot of things to lose and might not be in favor of something which in the end make society better. I think that is a very intriguing question, and that has never left my brain, so to say. Also due to good teachers in my education. So I started once upon a time with human geography, because I thought I was interested in the world in general, so to say, and human geography is a nice combination of physical geography, sociology, and all kind of other things. But after a while I thought, well, this is a nice education to become an educated newspaper reader, but perhaps there's something more in the world. I don't want to harm human geography, it's a great study, but I was also interested in changing the world and getting some grips on it and how you can do this. And that's why I've chosen to combine economics with geography. And I think that's also the beauty. Geography is close to reality, and economics takes some distance and tries to come to abstractions and to some more macro generalization, so to say. So I think that is a nice combination, and in a sense it has never left me. So I've always remained interested in how this process of creative destruction works. The nice thing is that it probably never ends, so it is a never ending quest to understand this, and also there are new players, new phenomena, new products, new institutions involved in this. So if you talk about the the rise of the steam train, electricity, the internet. These are phenomena that are brought forward by this process of creative destruction, but they are hugely different in the key processes and context. But still, I would, if people would put a knife on my throat and say, what kind of discipline do you represent? By the way, you should remember that this invention of disciplines is also just an historical accident, you can say. So there haven't been economists all the time. I also tend to say that even though Utrecht University School of Economics is the youngest economics department of the Netherlands, started in 2003, the first PhD student in economics, Julius Krieks, knocked on the door of Utrecht University in 1636 to get his PhD on what the Dutch call woekerrente, so profiteering, which is an economics phenomenon. But at that time, there was no economics discipline or economics faculty or economics department. Even Oxford and Cambridge only, I think, started economics chairs and departments in the last 2 centuries. But understanding this process of creative destruction, economic development, is something which I think economics has a better starting point for than other disciplines. But let me say immediately that if you want to understand this properly, also connecting to other disciplines gives you a very rich, and I would even say necessary, broader picture on how this process of economic development works. So that is why I would like to sort of characterize myself as an undisciplined economist. Yes, I start from economics because I think economics has some peculiar characteristics that make it a good starting point for thinking and doing the things I do. On the other hand, I'd like to be undisciplined and just on the one hand be driven by curiosity. So what can you learn from all the disciplines, but also bring those other disciplines at the table to improve the world as a place to live and work, so to say. And well, over time, I've been pursuing this both with economists. I've also been a board member of the Royal Dutch Economic Association, but also with any other discipline that could shed light on this quest. So computer scientists that understand how data is analyzed in new ways, philosophers that are able to think about values in a better way than economists are, political scientists that are better able to think about the political conflicts, historians that give it a richer picture on how the economy has evolved in the past, geographers that give a richer picture on how spatial unevenness can be seen and works out. And also, if you're interested in entrepreneurship nowadays, that you can find entrepreneurship in every discipline, because I think students also both need to have deep knowledge of their discipline, of a particular knowledge base, but also should be able to combine this with other disciplines and with the world outside to develop valuable knowledge, which is another word for entrepreneurship, so to say.
Thank you.
That's a rather long answer to your question. But
thank you.
That was a great, sorry. That was a great answer. That's all I wanted to say.
I think also the importance of different disciplines is very much in accordance with Rethinking Economics values. So the next question, given that you have been part of multiple economics faculties in the Netherlands and abroad, what do you think are the most important changes in economics education and research that you have seen in your academic career?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, that sounds a bit like spoiling your own cradle, so to say, but I'm happy that this narrow focus on theoretical models has been a thing of the past. So I think if you would have liked to have a career in economics 20, 30 years ago, there was a rather narrow path, which means writing Greek letter models as the ultimate holy grail. And the good news is that, well, that still has its value, but I think there has been a sort of an empirical turn or empirical revolution in economics for different reasons. So there's been a rise of experimental economics. So there's been sort of more feel of how you can change the world, but still have a sort of a strong causality test to that. There has been a rise of data. So we nowadays have much more data than 20, 30 years ago. And I think economists are also well positioned to make use of the data, to absorb the data. And I think also some economists have come to the conclusion that just pursuing theoretical models as if it is the world has some not only some limitations, might even be dangerous. I like the quote by Paul Krugman that he said these models are toy models, and you should also treat them as toy models. So they give insight, but well, they are toys. Don't take them too seriously, so to say. And especially if you want to change the world and improve it, you need to have a lot of knowledge about the details and how to implement this and how this works out in different contexts. So you need to have much more mid-range theories than just to have the most abstract version of theory that you can imagine. And I think economics has developed in a path to accommodate more empirics and less narrow-mindedly focused on Greek letter theorizing. That's one. Second, I think we've seen the rise of business schools, of business economics, student-wise. So a lot of the faculties in the Netherlands now are nowadays called faculties of economics and business, or business and economics. I think that's different than 30, 40 years ago when you had a faculty of economics proper, so to say. So you see now sort of a combination of this. Whether this is really a combination in practice or just in name is something we can discuss. But at least you see an enormous rise of business education, and I think economics per se has remained more stable. So even though you see those faculties growing, that's mainly due to the business part of it. And I think also economics, but perhaps the Dutch academic system in general has suffered from the enormous inflow of students and not the continuous pace of financing. So we have, in a sense, become sometimes dual machines, so to say. So there's a part of the faculty that teaches very intensively, perhaps too intensely, and there's a little part of the faculty that is doing more academic work. And I think that is something that is unwanted, but has been increasing over the last decades.
Okay, thank you. What do you think is the primary role of economists in society, and what is the most important value they bring to society?
Yeah, so you can have a narrow definition of economics that it's about the allocation of scarce resources, which I think most of my older colleagues would like to stick to. There is an even older, or perhaps more modern definition of economics as the science of the good life, which goes back to Aristotle. I would say economists have a very good position to integrate knowledge about the good life. That is perhaps that's an oxymoron in a sense. It's very old, but also very modern. So economics, in my perspective, should have the added value, a bit like Adam Smeets, so to say, to bring knowledge together for primarily governments, because it's originally staatshuishoudkunde in Dutch, so political economy, to serve the legislator, but it is a rather narrow implementation of what I just said, to make better decisions for the whole society, the whole economy. And of course, all kinds of organizations like businesses and other forms of organization have a similar task, but then on a more micro level, so to say. And I think economists have a very valuable role to play to make this happen. So to collect evidence, knowledge about the key mechanisms for the good life at the macro level, quantifying this, giving input for decisions which are difficult, which are about aggregates, and also once these decisions have been implemented, to provide evaluation of how this has been successful or not and how it can be improved. That is a much more dynamic and broader view on economics than it traditionally is, but I think if economics wants to be as useful as it can be, it should make this step forward.
I think that's very fascinating. And I was also be very curious now it relates to the economics program at Utrecht University. Could you tell us more about the Utrecht University economics program's unique strengths, especially to other economics programs in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so it is economics like any other economics. So it has its basic foundations, which should enable each and every bachelor student to also continue with an economics master. So that's the minimum requirement. On the other hand, it has a peculiar history. As I just or earlier said, it's the youngest economics department. It started in 2003, but economics has always been part of Utrecht University. But it could be found in many different corners. So we had leading economic historians, economic geographers, economic sociologists, people at the law and economics interface. And we built upon this in the School of Economics. So we have our own staff and faculty, but we have a very open and collaborative attitude towards the other people that are also engaged with better understanding the economy. And you can also see this in our education program. So Utrecht University is one of the few schools around the world in which you can combine economics with other disciplines from the start on. So you can combine economics with social sciences, with law, with geography. Nowadays, we've also added data sciences, which is also a bit of, you might say, a thing of the past in new clothing, because the old chairs in staatshuishoudkunde very often were chairs in staatshuishoudkunde and statistiek, so political economy and statistics. Because statistics is also the data about the state, so to say, literally. And nowadays, with the rise of data science, I think we should also embrace this, because if economics wants to be empirical and also wants to integrate all the information we have about society, then data science is a very useful addition to our multidisciplinary perspective. So you can combine economics with these other disciplines from the start on. Also, most of the scholars that work at the Utrecht University School of Economics have this open mind and attitude towards the neighboring disciplines. So you can also get involved in their day-to-day research and also in their research projects, theses, etc. And also, Utrecht University is a big university with a lot of world-leading scholars in the other disciplines. So it is also easy to combine and to also knock on the door or collaborate with students or scholars from the other disciplines. And that is not because we just cherish this combination of economics with other disciplines. That is nice, but it's not a value in itself, we think. That is what we sort of summarize in our real world perspective. If you want to contribute to the real world as an economics school, you can do this better when you combine economics with other disciplines to better understand how the economy works, how the real world works, but also to come up with solutions that ultimately make a difference. So it's our vision that we want to contribute to an economy where people flourish, which is sort of another phrase of saying it's the science of the good life. But we are also aware that just doing economics in a narrow sense is not enough to realize this mission. So we also think we should enrich economics with other disciplines to better recognize problems in society, but also to come up with solutions and perhaps even recognize opportunities for improvement.
And going back towards this importance of the role of economists and the value which they bring to society in the context of the good life, how does that relate to the unique strengths of your faculty?
Yeah, so the understanding the good life is something that cannot just be left to economists, at least not in the narrow sense. So you need to combine this with the other disciplines I just mentioned, but also ethics and political science. So we also have a bachelor in politics, philosophy, economics, with a history added to that, which is by excellence a combination of understanding the good life and improving this. And also, as I said, Utrecht University is a big tent, so to say, which there's the boundaries between disciplines are ignored, and it's even encouraged to cross them.
Okay, thank you. I will ask some questions about the situation of the past, the current situation, and future ideas for economics education. At Rethinking Economics NL, we believe that economics education needs to become more interdisciplinary, more real-world based and pluralistic. So reflecting on our earlier discussion, could you please tell us how your personal story and that of Utrecht University's faculty relates to these Rethinking Economics values?
Yeah. So if you're interested in economic development and the role of creative destruction, which is sort of my own background, you need to be pluralistic, because there's very often no data about this, so you need to have more qualitative insights in what happened. And also sometimes if you want to make decisions in policy or in business life, you cannot weigh everything against each other in a sort of in a calculus way. So you also need to compare the incomparable and still make decisions also in situations very often of radical uncertainty in which you cannot predict the future. So this all means that you need to be pluralistic. So you need to have multiple ways to look at the world and to have sort of triangulation of as a basis of your decision making, and also finding out whether your decisions have led to the results that you envisioned. So that is the pluralism. Well, the real world, I think we've been discussing this to quite some degree. I think the economics, it is not like theoretical physics in which you can sit in a room and think about strings and about black holes and then come out of your room 40 years later and win a Nobel Prize. It would be nice, but I think that is not what economics is about and should serve. So this closeness to the real world, improving the economy is part and parcel of economics. Some people might say, okay, but then you have to not go to the university, but to the University of Applied Science. Well, I'm fully against that, because you still need a lot of abstraction and advanced measurement, which you really get at the university. But that doesn't in itself mean that you can stick and sit in the building. You also need to go outside and also engage with the real world for inspiration, but also for implementation. And with respect to interdisciplinary, well, I feel a bit at unease. Well, unease is not the right word, but you can make a distinction between interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary science. And I think there are areas like development studies, environmental studies, innovation studies that are real interdisciplinary fields, so to say. In those fields, disciplines don't play a major role anymore. Of course, there is knowledge infusing them, but if you enroll for a bachelor in environmental studies or environmental science or for development studies, there is no discipline which you build upon, not an academic discipline, so to say. And our perspective at the School of Economics is that you start with economics. So you build upon a legacy of a particular knowledge creating community, which you can call an academic discipline, with all its pluses and some minuses as well, I agree. But you first build a basis and then reach out to others and start a process of combination, so to say. We can have endless discussions on whether you should start broad directly and then focus on the real world issue, or you should start somewhat more narrow and get the first principles and then reach out and get a broader view. I think just staying at economics proper is not the right way. I don't have a very strong opinion about whether development studies, environmental studies, innovation studies as interdisciplinary fields are good or bad. But I think for a School of Economics in 2021, it is the best strategy to have a deep foundation in economics and reach out to others, because you have also something to offer to the others, and you can enrich your own perspective with another perspective. And this own perspective also builds on a long legacy. So I would personally, and I think that's also for the school at large, be more in favor of a multidisciplinary approach than for an interdisciplinary. Let's not go into detail too much here, because we can have endless discussions on how many interpretations of a word you have. But I think the disciplines in themselves have also good things which we should use. But perhaps in 40 years, I have a different idea about this. But also because, as we said at the start of this interview, disciplines are also an invention of the past. So you can imagine that within 100 years, there will be no disciplines anymore as we know them now. So for better or worse. So I think combining economics with other disciplines is not just nice, but necessary in order to fulfill your societal duty as a positive change maker of society, so to say. I think pluralism is necessary to combine different perspectives and also different types of research methods to get to know the world, so to say. And this all serves this real world perspective, which I think is part and parcel of economics. And well, you might disagree with me and start another school of economics in which it's the real world doesn't matter. Well, that's fine with me, but I don't think that is a way forward.
I also don't think that's the way forward. And I think we're moving away from that, luckily. So for the next question, I will give a bit of an introduction. In 2018, Rethinking Economics conducted a quantitative analysis of bachelor curricula in the Netherlands, which was published in a report called Thinking Like an Economist. Exactly like Koen is holding. Oh, wow. Yes.
Prepared my homework as well.
So the report found that Dutch economics education is dominated by the study of market mechanisms among rational utility maximizing actors. And these markets are implicitly presumed to make up the entire economic system, as all social organization is assumed to take the form of imperfect market mechanisms. And this notion stemmed from the dominance of the neoclassical approach in economics programs, which took up 86% of all theory course time when we wrote the report. And what is more, students are trained within a framework dominated by quantitative methods, although we already discussed the importance of qualitative methods, which then constituted 97% of all course time. And there is also was also a lack of real world economics, as the report found that at the time, 75% of all courses stayed completely within the world of abstract theory, and little attention is given to economic problems, history, and sectors, making it difficult for students to understand where the theoretical models deviate from reality. For Utrecht University specifically, we found that at the time of the study, neoclassical economics constituted 76% of all teaching time, which is relatively lower than other universities throughout the Netherlands. And the number of courses focused on especially pluralistic and to a lesser extent interdisciplinary courses was relatively large compared to other universities in the Netherlands. However, 80% of economic courses in the study lacked any relation to real-world economics, which was similar to other universities. So the question that we have about this, has the economics program changed since then, and if so, in what ways?
Yeah, we were, of course, very proud that we were sort of the most in line of the Rethinking Economics mantra, so to say, and very disappointed that only 80% of our courses, no, only 20% of our courses were related to the real world, while we pursued this 100%. And that might also have to do something with you reading just the web text of the courses and not going to the courses themselves. So we are sure that this percentage of real world economics courses is higher in practice, but we've understood that we did not do a good communication job there. So we are working on that communication, which in itself is an underestimated effect of the economy and education, I would say. So don't get me wrong, that is extremely important, and we are doing better, and we should have done better there. That does not by necessity mean that each and every course should have a real world perspective, because sometimes you just have to get the better basics of a particular theory or a particular approach. But I think it really helps if you put this into a real world perspective early on. So learning mathematics and statistics without having any idea of how this would work out in the real world or what kind of purpose this serves, I think not many students will get out of their bed and go to their monitor in this sense or to the university without having an idea. Well, some of them might do just to get the point, so to say, but I think that's a waste of your time and also of the teacher's time. So I think this real world perspective is also very important for motivational reasons. So I would say it's perhaps not 100%, but certainly more than 20%. And I would say the abundant majority of the courses should have a real world perspective and should have connections to the real world. And preferably, we've also, in the meantime, introduced the core method. So that's a method that has been developed by economists around the world, but most dominantly from the UK, which puts the economy and economic problems at the forefront, and then thinks about how economic theories and methods can be used for understanding that. We have embraced this, and it has also become a jumping board in our bachelor program. So in that sense, we've given more prominence to this real world perspective with the core method as well. And it's also a very innovative method. So you can also use a lot of online add-ons to it. Why I think ignoring neoclassical economics is throwing away the child with the bathwater, so to say, or the baby with the bathwater, is that, well, neoclassical economics is still one of the best developed frameworks, has the best developed textbooks, and it would be, I would think, unwise to get rid of it. So you might discuss it, you might debate it, and you might say it is a special case in economics. That would be very radical, but you can say that. And in that sense, I would like to concur, for example, with Brian Arthur, one of the founding fathers of innovation economics and increasing returns to scale, that something like complexity economics is economics, but done more broadly, so to say, which we would wholeheartedly embrace by saying, well, neoclassical economics is economics done narrowly, but it's not unimportant. You need to understand what the narrow model says, and I think it's also one of the reasons why we don't have a full-fledged program with all the different family members of the economics school, so to say, because a lot of these other members don't have a mature teaching method, textbooks, etc., which you can build upon as the neoclassical part of the family has. And whether it currently is too much or too less, well, I would think it's too much, but that is also because of the lack of proper educational input from the other sides. On the other hand, as I said already earlier on, you can combine economics with other disciplines. So, for example, if you combine economics with geography or with social science in Utrecht, you get much more network methodologies, which I really think is a way forward. And also there are leading, even neoclassical economists that are leading that movement. And yeah, whether that is quantitative or qualitative, to be honest, I don't. That doesn't matter too much to me, as long as you are open to use different tools to understand reality and to come to abstractions that with proper investments can be used into reality, but you also need to understand reality and also use reality as an inspiration to improve your academic basis. So I would be very much in favor of knowledge circulation. So yes, develop academic knowledge, but invest in implementing this, also learn the language from outside, also do the tests whether it's really relevant outside, and also get inspired by issues about sustainability, about lack of inclusiveness, to also, there's only 24 hours in a day, even for an economist, and you can only spend so many hours on one or the other topic. So you can say, well, I want to understand how many angels can efficiently be on the top of a needle from an economics point of view, which might be an interesting quest to go for. You might also want to understand how we can still live in a planet which we have enough biodiversity and flourish as human beings, and also the other parts of nature, and what are the difficult decisions we then have to make, and what are the costs and benefits in monetary terms and non-monetary terms of all those actions. I think that's a more interesting question, but that is the way forward. Is that an answer to your question?
I think so, yes, thanks. So we've already elaborately discussed the importance of multiple disciplines and real world-based economics and pluralism. Are there any concrete plans of making changes in education to make economics education at Utrecht University more engaging with other disciplines, real world-based and pluralistic?
Yeah, we continue to invest in our collaborations with the other disciplines. That's also part and parcel of Utrecht University, which is not only dominated by the faculties and the disciplines, but also by cross-cutting themes like institutions and sustainability, in which the university and also we as a department are heavily involved, and that will continue, and that will be better communicated also in our educational programs to the world outside. So we are much more, we will become much more platforms of societally relevant and academically rigorous knowledge creation and diffusion. I think that would be my definition of a modern university. So we will become much more of a meeting place of disciplines, of different stakeholders of society. And that might mean many things. So, for example, we are in the midst of the age of big data, and the role of data and the amount of data will increase enormously. So we better prepare ourselves for that. So combining economics with data science is something which we heavily invest in, because we think that it's a task of our profession as economists. That is something society asks for. And I think also economists are are well prepared for this new combination with data science. You can say it's econometrics in a novel way. That's not completely true, but of course there's a good basis for that. I think better than if you study religion, then making a combination with data science, even though the Bible is full of data as well, is a bit less useful, so to say. So investing in data science as another discipline will become more and more important. Also, this knowledge circulation, so bringing in the real world and involving stakeholders, alumni into our education as guest lecturers, as also as people that bring in research projects that are part of our education, thesis projects that will become less of a disconnected activity, but much more engaged with society, have more what the medical scholars call labs. I don't like the word, but it gives you an indication that things come together in an empirical way and are being improved. I think that it should be much more part and parcel of our economics education as well. And also, I think economics has this sort of implicit, somewhat unrealistic assumption that we educate 18, 20-year-olds at the start of their career, and then they go out in all kind of walks of life, and they never have to go back to the university, which is quite in contrast with people in medical science or engineering or accounting, for example. Or you might say accounting is part of economics, but let's not go there. I think also economics should, if we take this vision or that we are a meeting place for knowledge circulation more seriously, we also need to continue our education and invest more in lifelong learning. I don't really like this term, but I think also if you're 25, 35, 65, you should be able and willing to get back to the university or other institutes. I don't think the university has a monopoly on that, to enrich and to refresh your knowledge base. And I think that is mutually beneficial. So that is good for students, for staff, and also for people getting older and still want to be relevant in society. And I think we are not doing a good job there yet. So we are investing in that, and that will take some time to be ready. And we might even see a new combination of platforms there that is beyond the university, or half in the university, half outside the university. I don't care that much. So I'd like to see pluralism in solutions. There are 1,000 alternatives. Let them flourish, and let's see what works best. And the university should not have per se the monopoly on this.
I think that's a beautiful answer. I think it's a very fascinating conversation. I'm sorry to say we're already closing towards the concluding statements and such. So what are the main goals for the economics education at Utrecht University for the coming years? And how does this relate to the unique strengths that the current faculty has already in the economics program, such as interdisciplinarity, world economics, and also pluralistic approaches?
Yeah, I think what we will invest in and what is important for us, I think for the economics discipline at large, so we would like to be a front runner in there and not a special niche or something, to take this real world perspective seriously, and taking this seriously will demand different things in different times. And I think for the coming decade or decades, that means investing more in data literacy, so understanding data, understanding the role of data, using data, analyzing large parts of data, and perhaps paradoxically also think about things that are hard to measure, or making sense of all this data. So sense making and values, which comes close to ethics and to, for example, the work by Amartya Sen and even by Aristotle, so to say, which brings us back to the economics as the good life. So on the one hand, we live in the age of big data, and we better make use of it and use of it in a productive way. But what productive means and what kind of values we need to weigh for that, I think that is something that will last. And I think economics has not done a proper job to also invest in this ethical perspective. I think Adam Smith knew how to do this, so to say. Aristotle for sure. We have sort of lost that over the past decades, but I think we should invest, yes, in data science, quantification, etc. Make use of that and become very good professionals in that, and also academic researchers, but also not forget about this value side and the weighing of and interpreting of data. So these are two things that I think we need to invest in, and things we are currently investing in. Also, new modes of teaching. The real world is getting closer every day because of all kind of digital connections. Although we also know that you think you are talking to me, but is it really Erik Stam that you're seeing in front of you? I think that is something that we're going to make the best use of in our education as well. So digitalization. And there's knowledge circulation, so making better use of knowledge in society, being more of a meeting place for people that are interested in economic problems and making the economy a better place. I think that is something that should be more prominent in our education, also in our institutes. So breaking down the boundaries, the borders, not only between disciplines, but also the world outside. And really pursuing this not as a necessity or not as something that just gets over us, but really investing in this and both thinking deeply but also acting swiftly to realize this.
Thank you. I think those are very important goals. So final question. What are necessary steps to achieve these goals? And do you have concrete examples of when these goals will be implemented? And if not, when do you expect them to be implemented?
Yeah, these are things that cannot wait for decades. So this needs to be implemented today, perhaps even yesterday or tomorrow. On the other hand, we will not know for sure what the effects of this will be within 20 or 30 years, because the students, we also have an influence on economics at the secondary school level, for example. And if you start as a 12-year-old, well, you won't get economics directly, but certainly as a 15 or a 16-year-old, you might only use this knowledge when you're 26 or later. So, and it takes some time for our revolution that we are talking about, or evolution, if you want to say so, to fully develop, but then also to see the benefits and fruits of this, we have to be patient as well. So it's a combination of taking actions now and also reallocating our money, which was traditional economics problem, towards directions that we think are societally beneficial, but also be patient that this will not pay out immediately. And of course, in the meantime, we should have some milestones, for example, to see how we improve the data literacy of our students now in comparison to 5 years ago, and now in comparison to 5 years later, and also see how often our students are making use of these new combinations of economics with other disciplines, and also tracing the way we change education so that as Rethinking Economics pursues the real world, it's not something out there, but something in here, so to say.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers and also for the inspiring conversation. Also on behalf of Rethinking Economics NL.
Thank you for organizing this platform and for accelerating the change that we should pursue.